Well, good morning. Good morning in my part of the world. It's like 20 after 6 a.m. I am DBJ, and this is your Third Pillar Thursday. One of my favorite things to go into. Why am I wearing this? Well, this is my celebration of Avengers: Infinity War. Closest thing is my Spider-Man robe, and behind me is I think that's a space station. But normally I do videos about fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons. Why am I doing this? Well, this Third Pillar Thursday is about man-made obstacles. In the details, said I like steampunk clock tower or superhero cityscapes or orbital space stations, and you don't need to just use natural environments as obstacles for third pillar usage in games such as Dungeons and Dragons. Of course, the first and second pillars are combat and social interactions, but using obstacles, using the environment, using the area that your player characters are navigating allows you to spread the spotlight to other player characters, to split the attention of the player characters when you have a number of objectives, and allows you to, as one responder once responded to one of my videos, allows you to control the pace of the game. So let's talk about various types of an infinite number of man-made locations. So the first one I talked about was a clock tower, steampunk clock tower. Now you can, maybe you have a foundry or a clock tower or a factory or dwarven hold or some sort of location where there's lots of gears and objects moving and heavy objects being lifted and turned and twisted, hydraulic presses and flowing metal that's being such as in a foundry, maybe the dwarven hold. They're mining gold and ore and iron, and it's hot and rather lethal. So you have yourself like maybe let's go with the clock tower, a steampunk clock tower, dwarven hold, a foundry. Maybe there's a gnomish factory that builds golems, but whatever the case may be, you can use those as hindrances. Maybe it's very loud, not a lot of space to move around. The random chance that a player character's a weapon or clothing gets caught into a gear. A weapon is disarmed and lands on a conveyor belt, and it's about to roll towards a furnace or something like that. So you can always use man-made locations to add a little tension, add a little drama, and confound the players. And also, again, you can move the spotlight. For example, maybe a character with a lot of ranged attacks like bow and arrow or casting spells works very well on an open plain, maybe outside in the city, but inside of a tight, narrow location like a factory or a foundry or a clock tower, maybe there are just too many obstacles for them to use. And so this way, as a game master, you can modulate the situation that the players are in so that they have to use a number of various skills. For example, maybe you have a player character that's he's the powerful barbarian and just slays everything, but the players have to make wisdom checks to navigate around the dangerous gears and things moving around, and maybe the clock tower strikes and the sound is just deafening and such. And so therefore you can also test your player characters on their strongest attributes and then their weakest attributes. Maybe there's saving throws. Maybe the clock tower strikes and the sound is so deafening that Players may go deaf, including the enemy. Now, remember, the environment can also affect adversaries as well if they are not attuned to that location. So, more often than not, in a man-made location, no one is naturally attuned to it. It's not like a trapdoor spider in the jungle or something like that. They may be just bandits coming after you, or enemies or assassins, and then the bell strikes, and then everyone's like holding their ears and is bleeding and such. For the single person who might be watching, I'm wearing a robe in celebration of Infinity War. So this is my Spider-Man robe. I love it. It's funny. Anyway, so second location, I was thinking like modern day. So you have yourself your typical superhero cityscape. It doesn't have to be superheroes. You can do spies. You can do modern day. I would love to run a game based on like the Wanted movie, or like John Wick, or even although it's slightly future, Equilibrium, man. We just have like gunmen and things, and you're riding, fast cars through the streets. And of course, cities present all kinds of hazards. You have cars and people and tall buildings and electric lines and power lines, light posts, and all those kind of things. And they're great to throw into as obstacles for your players to overcome. In any time setting, having a crowd of people, now you get to use like charisma saving throws. Hey, you've got to run through a crowd. Make a charisma saving throw, or the people will call. I think a John Wick game would be awesome. I mean, just the the idea of like a bunch of player characters, man, just weapons everywhere, guns firing, and of course, like here you could have like a very hyper kinetic idea where the player characters are so superior to those around them that you can almost picture them moving um, where everything around them is moving in slow motion almost, and the player characters themselves are the spotlight, so you can have like bullets ricocheting off the walls and such, and then all of a sudden, I don't know, a school bus rolls by, and it's like, okay, do you take the shot and through the school bus to hit the bad guy, or do you run for cover, or do you lay down suppressing fire so that the enemy doesn't take the shot through the school bus? Maybe the enemy is lethal but doesn't want to harm children, so then the player character jumps on top of or grabs the underside of the school bus as it turns the corner, and using it for cover or something like that. So yeah, you can absolutely run a game. And we all get dogs. That would be pretty sad in a John Wick style game, dude. Although I gotta admit, like, once everyone's dog dies, like pretty much hands are off. You can pretty much get away with anything, right? I mean, the first 5 minutes of John Wick, once that puppy was killed, we pretty much understood, like, yeah, go ahead and kill everybody. I get it. I really do understand why you're so upset. Go for it. So let me move on to what's to kind of reference what's behind me for other role players who love sci-fi games, and that is the use of space stations. I love this. I love orbital space stations, altered gravity. For example, a place like this behind me may have a zero gravity central core, but the outer rim is spinning, so it creates I guess would be considered standard gravity, or it doesn't have to be. It could actually be quite high. But a space station can revolve and create its own gravity, and so you could have various gravity locations, and therefore it would very much adjust the hazards involved. Maybe you have a lot of aerial vehicles flashing by. You can have elevators moving up and down. You have a very large cargo being moved in light and zero-G environments, and the player characters and the enemy could get jammed between them, crushed. Maybe if uh, you know 20 tons of materials being moved in zero-G, although it may not move quickly, maybe there's a tension where the bad guy and the good guy are locked in battle, and if they're both locked in battle, one of them is going to have to remove themselves from being locked in battle, or they're both going to get crushed. And it could be just a countdown. Game master rolls a D4. All right, in 3 rounds, one of you's going to have to flinch and get the hell out of there, or you're going to get crushed. And the first person to flinch may be vulnerable to getting shot in the back or something like that. But overall, my point is that using the environment, because I love using the environment. I in Absolute Tabletop and Critical Hit Publishing Facebook groups, both of them, I used to post third pillar thoughts all the time. And so I wanted to take these Third Pillar Thursday videos to, again, expand on what I love to do, and that's use the environment. Of course, I write the Cinematic Environs RPG books for Critical Hit Publishing. They're located on DriveThruRPG, and you can get them in print or PDF. But the whole point is that it specializes in nothing but the third pillar, and the third pillar is the environment. And so man-made locations create great opportunities for using the third pillar. I'll rewind back to 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, or any fantasy or medieval game. City streets, rope bridges, even some ancient ruins can all be physical locations that are man-made that can create plenty of hazards. An open market in like a bazaar where there's like open market and tapestries and people crowded buying goods and services create all kinds of hazards. They create difficult terrain to run through. You might need to make charisma checks or saving throws to not upset people you're knocking down and pushing over, who may impede your travel, alert the authorities, or throw fruit at you. You can use various levels. So if you're running through a bazaar or an open air market, the more agile players could run over top of the tents, while the heavier armored individuals may have to push through the crowd. You have lots of things you can dump over to create the possibility of knocking people down. For example, let's get into some mechanics, right? Player characters are chasing or are being chased by people in a medieval setting, and there's a big open air market. One of the player characters says, I'm going to knock over the fruit cart. Maybe knocking over the fruit cart creates the equivalent of a grease spell, and it only may last a couple of rounds or something, right? Hey, roll a D6 or a D4 or something. Then you knock it over, the guards run through it, grease spell, they make their deck saves. No, they didn't. They, boom, slip and fall, rotted tomatoes on their face. Everyone's happy, player characters get away. You can do all kinds of things like that. Maybe there's a blacksmith nearby, and one of the player characters says, I'm going to grab one of the hot pokers, or a sword that's being forged right there, and it's hot and blazing and stuff. And just temporarily, it's a flaming sword and does an extra D6 of flame damage or something. You can always reskin, rename, reuse anything in the environment, even if it's just temporary. You don't have to break your game and just say, hey, when someone pulls a hot poker out of a fire, that it's a permanent, +1 flaming weapon or something. No, it wouldn't be. It would only last a short time. Whatever. Use those things to layer into the game, to allow you the opportunity to create obstacles in your game so that you can utilize that third pillar, because there's nothing preventing the enemy from doing the same thing. The players are being pursued, and one of the guards yells ahead to one of their agents. An agent comes out of the crowd, knocks over a fruit cart to so that the player characters might have to roll and slip and fall in the fruit or something. You can also add a lot of like investigation or perception checks to see if they notice maybe hidden agents in the crowd. Maybe make some of those uh, perception checks to see if they noticed things that they can use in the environment to their advantage. Then there's plenty of cover for players and enemies to jump behind, including people. People could become cover and represent temporary hit points. So if someone grabs a hostage and holds them tight, um, which would be pretty easy, maybe they offer 3 hit points of uh, temporary cover. So someone goes to strike, and you got to get through the first 3 hit points. They do 12 points of damage. The first 3 kills the person, and the other 9 hit points hits the character. Pretty nasty, but whatever. This is a medieval fantasy. Somebody's going to do something pretty horrific. Same thing with modern day and sci-fi. You can do the same thing where someone grabs someone or something as cover, maybe a robot or whatever, and it's struggling to get free to go about its business of delivering meals to the rich or something. So absolutely, positively use random, strange things, but common things in man-made locations to confound and complicate the situation. Now, in the cinematic environs, I do something called even the odds. And even the odds is just a very simple mechanic where you roll any die and you want an even result because you want to even the odds. So if you get an even result, you're not going to be a target. Get an odd result, too bad. There's a chance that you're going to be a target of whatever's going to happen. Absolutely, I am a movie fan and a RP gamer. When you said it reminds me of action movies where they kick over the tables to hide behind it. Absolutely, I am 100% in love with movies and all the things that happen in the movies that are very cinematic, and I don't want to do anything to impede the use of that. Someone kicks over a table, it's instant cover. It's extra hit points. Maybe it won't last very long, but you absolutely can use it. Hey, I kick over a table when the evil cultist gets ready to cast its lightning bolt or something, and then boom, give you bonus to a saving throw. Maybe it adds an extra 10 hit points of cover. Using the game system, you have like half cover, which is like +2, and I think 3/4 cover is like +5 AC bonus. I might even allow those bonuses to add to the saving throw. I'm probably wrong because I guess it does add to it. Doesn't matter. I'm the game master, so I get to decide. The player character came up with a great idea. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Again, maybe roll a D4. Rolling a die and adding some randomizer to it also takes it out of my hands. A, I'm saying it's temporary. B, I'm giving them the opportunity to maybe use it more often than once, and then just letting it go. Adding to your point about kicking over the table, I mean, kicking over tables, swinging from chandeliers, picking up heavy objects and hitting people with it, throwing a tapestry over somebody and giving them a blanket party, you know what I mean? Blinding them and then just kicking the hell out of them. Using I don't know, a rope and lashing it around their ankles and then tying it to a horse and then smacking the horse's ass and it rides away or something. 2 people tackling each other and then falling over the fruit cart and then rolling over, knocking over something else, maybe knocking over the stands, that the struts that hold up the tents, and then slashing at them to have the whole tent come down on someone. That could easily just be an entangle spell or a web spell, but you don't have to say that in the game. Like, you're the game master. You don't have to say, I'm going to call it a web spell. No. Just take a quick flip into a book or come up with a saving throw or just make it a big giant net, which brings me to my last point, which is something very rarely used in games and very rarely if it even is mentioned in games, there are no mechanics for it. So I'm going to give you my game master adjudication on how to do this. And I'm probably going to do another video about it. But what am I talking about? I'm going to talk about sabotage. How does a game master or dungeon master allow their players to sabotage the environment? And what do I mean by that? Well, sabotaging the environment is like a gunman shooting the gas tank of a car and having it explode, taking that steampunk clock tower and sticking their sword into one of the gears until the whole thing starts to grind, going into a dwarven hold and just really mucking up the works by maybe knocking over a foundry pool or something like that. Yeah, RP gamer, you were talking about the human shield being a bit morbid. But like you said, once the person's dead, is a dead weight, and throw people, knock them down, to distracting. I mean, well, you know what? I hate to say this, but there's been plenty of heroes that have used people as human shields. Now, of course, the hero took a bad guy and grabbed him by around the throat and then ducked behind his body and started, firing and stuff. But maybe not so much in. I think John Wick did it. Yeah, John Wick did it plenty of times where he'd grab a guy, break his arm, or take his kneecap out, do a couple of more headshots, take the person that he's using as a shield, throw him to the ground, and blow his brains out. Yeah, that's happened quite a bit. Yeah, that's happened a ton of times. So, but you can sabotage is one of those things that it's so infinite, has so many infinite possibilities. It's very difficult to rationalize. So here's how I use it. Two ways how I use it. One is parity with character skill, and the other one is the cost of performing the sabotage. So using a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, when, let's say, the bard or the wizard doesn't have any combat skills, but they want to push a heavy object on top of a bad guy, right? So the barbarian and the fighter and the ranger are all having battles, and the bard and the wizard's out of his spells. The bard feels like, all I've got is a short sword or rapier, and I don't do as much damage as they do, but I still want to engage in the combat. How I perform sabotage is that, look, if a player character makes a combat roll, on average, what kind of damage output would they do? So maybe die 6, a die 8, maybe even a die 10, and then you get to add some strength bonus in there or dex bonus, but the player character doesn't have a weapon in their hand. They want to climb. The wizard wants to take out one of the posts from the in the bazaar and knock the tent down on someone, or wants to spill over a hot pot of grease onto one of the enemies. I would just have them use their intelligence and then apply either a die damage or, like I was saying before, some kind of temporary effect, blindness, entanglement, restraint. Maybe they are temporarily distracted or stunned if I didn't apply any kind of damage level. Now, for a longer set of sabotage, for example, the barbarian and the fighter and the ranger are fighting in the crowd. The crowd starts to separate. The bard says, I'm going to go up to the top of the castle tower. And this place is kind of old and ancient, like you said, and I'm game master. I'm like, yeah, sure, okay. Bard says, well, I'm going to try to push over the top block of stone and try to, knock it down on top of the ogre that's rampaging or something. In that case, if it takes maybe more than one round for the bard to make rolls to climb up the wall, to get up the top, maybe make some strength rolls to push over the stone, I would add the additional damage value or outcome to how long it took him. Because if the bard's going to waste 3 rounds and the fighter has attacked for 3 rounds, it's a little disingenuous not to grant the bard 3 rounds of effect if they're going to spend 3 rounds to do it. And so, and I'm just talking adjudication in my head. This isn't really something that it's like, why, how do you make the sausage? It's the inside stuff. But I just wanted to give my 2 cents. So in essence, if someone spends 3 rounds to do something, and in those 3 rounds they could do a die 8 damage, I would just give them 3 die 8 at the end of that sabotage thing. So if the bard spends 3 rounds, gets to the top of the tower, pushes over the stone, tries to knock it down on the road, knocks it down on the ogre, I'd give him the roll to attack or even make a saving throw against the bard's action. Maybe give the bard a wisdom or intelligence roll to time it right. After making the rolls to climb and the strength roll to dislodge the stone, and then, roll against the ogre's intelligence would probably not be very much. Ogre probably loses most likely, or might get lucky, and then gets hit probably with, 3d8, 3d10 damage or something. Or I might have like 2d8 damage plus restrained or plus being stunned, and then maybe roll a d4. How long does the stun last or something like that? But my point is that sabotage really isn't a gaming statistical thing that is noted in many games. Usually it's up to the game master to create what those are. So before I'm going to have to go, I do these videos before work, strangely enough. So in summary, thanks RP Gamer for joining in, by the way. Here in the States, I'm up pretty damn early. But just in summary, it's about using man-made locations as great places to have hazards, and use the 3rd pillar of exploration to add to combat and social encounters for the 1st and 2nd pillar. I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I mentioned a steampunk clock tower. I mentioned a superhero cityscape, and I mentioned like the image behind me, I mentioned a space station, using those as environmental locations. So I am DBJ. I'm going to sign out. I'm a contributing writer to Critical Hit Publishing. My baby is the Cinematic Environs, and I am part of the Facebook group Critical Hit Publishing, and of course Absolute Tabletop, who are like kissing cousins, man. So anyway, if you've just checked in, unfortunately I'm about to sign out, but I will be posting this of course to my YouTube. Thank you guys. And thank you, RP Gamer. Oh, by the way, RP Gamer, and any others who see this video of who I have reached out to, it's very important, who I reached out to, who've part of the 30-day challenge. Dave from Nerdarchy has responded to a post that I did for the Creators Conclave. He's very willing to have you on his show, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday. If you contact him, he has posted. All you have to do is respond to him. So the post I did, and I listed a ton of smaller, newer YouTube content creators. He only asked that you are currently and consistently producing YouTube content. All you need to do is contact him or private message him and say, hey, I'd love to be on the show, so we can talk during the day. Dave's a really good guy. He likes to give back to the community. And so if you are watching this and you are a YouTube content creator, contact Dave at Nerdarchy. The worst thing that can happen is that he just tells you no. So anyway, I'm DBJ. I've got to get to work, and I'm out. Thanks, guys. Thanks you very much.